Let's talk to someone who deserves a big chunk of the credit for the rise of Brighton. The Chief Executive and Deputy Chairman, Paul Barber, OBE, is here. Hello.
Morning, Sam.
Thank you very much for joining us. And we've got the Brighton and Hove Council leader, Bella Sankey, who has been bellowing her support from the stands for many a year.
Morning, Sam. Good to be here.
Nice to have you. Paul, how would you look back on the start of the season, bearing in mind the terrific end that you had last season?
Yeah, I think it's been pretty good. I mean, it's been difficult because we've been trying to compete in 3 competitions with another one to come. We've picked up a few injuries, but we've also picked up some good wins, some good results and some good performances. And like anything in football, you have some bad days as well you have to deal with and pick up some injuries. You've got to overcome that and be resilient to those. But overall, we're satisfied, but there's a long way to go and we've got a big week ahead of us.
And how have you enjoyed your Europa League excursion so far? I know you've got a big trip to Amsterdam this week.
Brilliant. It's fantastic. It's what we all work towards, isn't it? And we keep pushing to try and play at the highest level we can. And there's still the Champions League to reach, hopefully at some point in the future. But at the moment, we're really enjoying everything that's coming our way. And as I say, it's difficult at times because we're not used to playing in 3 or 4 competitions. But I think we're giving a good account of ourselves so far.
When you said Champions League to reach there was a few sort of nervous sort of like, okay. But that's the ambition of the football club now, isn't it? You don't set a ceiling for yourselves.
There are no ceilings. I think if people would look back 10 or 15 years and talked about the Premier League, you'd have still had those nervous chuckles. And then talk about Europa League and you had the nervous chuckles. And talk about top 4, you get more. But that's fine. But each time we've tried to push the club further and harder and faster. And each time we do that, we've had a relative amount of success. And we've still got so much to do. There's so much in football to aim for. And people talk about winning the Premier League, but what about the FA Cup? What about winning the Carabao Cup? What about putting some silverware on the sideboard here as well, which would be good.
And you've done some good business already this season. You've signed new contracts for Kara Matoma and for Jason Steele. Are those contracts negotiations getting harder?
Well, the better you do, the better players you have, the more demands there are on the chairman. That's the natural consequence of being a relatively successul football club. And if you want good players, they want paying at the highest level. There's a couple of ex-players in the room that will tell you that. So, but no, we're really happy with the squad we've got, and we're really happy with the blend of young players and experienced players and players that are still sort of finding their way in English football. And we're really excited for the future.
And Bella, you sort of. We'll see shortly the impact of the club on the wider community in terms of financially, but you've obviously been around the area and seen the club go through this transition into what it is now. What impact have you seen, visible impacts have you seen around the community?
I mean, the impact of the club, you cannot overstate it. It's phenomenal. The pride that this city and the wider Sussex region has in the Albion is extraordinary, and it's so well deserved because we have come through adversity as a club and as a city. And I think you can just see from this exquisite stadium that we have, the people that this club draws in now, and the economic impact that's outlined in this report, and it's only getting better and better.
You were at the club's training ground, I think, for the Premier League launch. What was that like?
That was incredible. I'll be honest, it's still quite surreal launching the Premier League in Brighton and Hove. The training ground is phenomenal. The fact that we have all of the teams playing there, I think, says a lot about the club's values. The fact that the club is investing in the women's team, the disability teams. I saw them play, extraordinary, so much skill. And again, just a fantastic occasion for the city and the wider region.
Yeah, the women's involved with Manchester United at the weekend, a terrific game down at Crawley. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. I know you're a big fan. Do you get to many games?
I get to as many as I can. I watch most of the games at home. I'm quite busy these days with my job, and I've got 2 small kids, but I do try and show as much support as I can.
Is there no way you can get a trolley case for later in the week and go off to Amsterdam? It's a business trip, really, isn't it?
I would love to. Probably not on this occasion, but I was here for the first Europa game, and that was phenomenal. I mean, I'm sure like many people in the city, I had butterflies all day. It just is extraordinary, and you have to keep pinching yourself.
Well, Bella is well aware of the impact of the football club on the wider community, and the city as a whole. But I wonder if many of you knew that back in 1997, when this place was in the planning, I think it was hoped that the Amex would deliver around about £23.5 million extra to the local economy. But last season alone, this football club contributed not 23.5 million, a staggering £600 million of benefit to the local economy. Let's find out how.
I like to think of Brighton and Hove as the most successful seaside city in the UK, and I think it is. And the football club is an integral part of that success story.
Last year alone, the economic impact of us being in the Premier League and going as well as we did was around £600 million to the city in visitor numbers coming to the city, people shopping, eating, staying in the hotels, and the job creation at the club has added significantly to the local economy as well. So it's been a very significant boost to the city of Brighton and Hove.
We are a city, we're huge, there's a massive population here, great catchment area, and to be playing Premier League football is obviously getting bums on seats, growing the brand of Brighton Hove Albion, and now European football as well. It caps it all off, and we're a club certainly going somewhere. It's
an amazing figure, and this year with the Europa League it could be another 70-80 million on top of that as well. So a lot of jobs created, a lot of jobs sustained, and a fantastic boost for the local economy.
Well, there's the raw data. I'm sure the chairman's very proud of what the club has achieved. Just tell us how impressive some of those numbers are when you consider the performance of the club on the pitch as well.
Well, I think if you go back to Martin Perry's time when they were projecting £20-odd million to boost the economy, and look at the figures where we are now. I mean, it's transformational, and that's a combination of a lot of people's hard work over a long period of time. First of all, to get the planning permission to build this place, and then the hard work over many years and the chairman's investment. I mean, we've lost a lot of money along the way. Tony's lost a lot of money along the way, but it's all been with a plan in mind to get to this point where not only are we playing at the highest level and competing in European football and sustaining over 1,000 jobs, but we're genuinely making the city better. And I think, the global profile that we've created for the city, the number of jobs we've created, the inward investment into the city as a result of it has been incredible. And, that should now continue for many, many years to come, and hopefully the city will benefit for many years to come as well.
Bella, just to sort of put that into context, you're a season ticket holder, but obviously you have a wider remit. Talk about that impact, what it feels like, what it looks like in the city itself.
I think the thing to say about the contribution economically is Brighton and Hove is not a city that has a huge amount of industry outside of our tourist industry. That is so significant and so important to the city. It employs so many people, and obviously the club now makes a massive contribution to that. The club is also one of our largest employers in the city and in the wider region, both directly employing full-time, part-time staff, but also contractors as well. And then, as Paul says, the profile that the club has now given the city, both within the UK, but obviously internationally as well. 54,000 international visitors coming to see the club in the last year. The contribution that makes financially and economically to the city is absolutely huge. It's clearly dwarfed all predictions and expectations. And, for Brighton and Hove, that is just such a success, and it means so much to the city.
And you touched on the global numbers there of people coming from outside the UK to visit Brighton, but it's amazing, really. The global viewers speak for themselves, don't they? I mean, I was reading the other day that Brighton are the most watched football team in Japan because of Kaoru Mitoma. I mean, do you think about that when you're recruiting players? Actually, this is also going to give us a little bit more in terms of interest. I mean, the numbers in Spain are going through the roof because you signed Ansu Fati. I mean, for a tourist hotspot like Brighton, the level of exposure must be really hard to sort of put a value on.
It is, and there are specialist companies out there that help us do that and put together these reports. But it's the overall effect, I think. It's not just about individual players. It's about the way the club conducts itself, the way we treat people, the way visitors are received here, the reputation the club has, not just in in football, but across the wider business world. And they're all important factors in creating a brand like Brighton Hove Albion Football Club. And we've got amazing backers like American Express and Nike that continue to support us, and American Express have been there from the start. And even before this stadium came out of the ground, American Express was supporting us. Peter Godfrey in his old days back at the American Express company believed in us then, and they believe in us even more now, and they're important contributors to what we've been doing as well.
I think overall last year that Brighton contributed £120 million to the Exchequer in terms of taxes and rates and VAT and NI. It's a huge number, bearing in mind that, say, 15 years ago it was nothing like that. Have you got a thank you email from Jeremy Hunt or anything?
The only thank you email I've ever had from a politician is from Bella.
We've got to congratulate you as well, because the Albinisation of the, is that the right way of saying it? Albionisation of the city has been quite something over the course of the last few years. It wasn't always the case. How does that continue?
Well, we're really proud of what we managed to pull off this summer to welcome the club's successes in Europe. And we did Albionise the city. That is a word. It should be a word. And we're going to continue to do that. We think that the club is one of the most important partners that we have in the city. We know that our residents are obsessed with this club, and we want to show them that we are too, and we want to have a way of giving voice to that pride that people have in the city. We're going to be giving the Albion freedom of the city later this month in a ceremony at Brighton Town Hall, which is incredibly well deserved. And obviously we're now also supporting the move of the women's club back to the city. We're really keen to get the women's club back here, and we would love to see a purpose-built stadium for them. Look what happens when you have a purpose-built stadium. As you say, one of the most welcoming stadiums in the country, if not in Europe and the world, and we want to do the same thing for our women.
Yeah, and that women's team had a bit of a regeneration in the summer, didn't it? A bit of a change of direction. You've got new players coming into the squad and a new focus. What is the latest with the possible move back to the city?
Well, there's a lot of work going on. I mean, we genuinely think there's a sort of a gap between where we are playing at Crawley, which is not where our fans want us to be, or even our team, and playing all of our games here. And we've got to find a way to bridge that gap and help grow the audience for women's football. And we think if we can find the right site, with Bella's help, we'll be able to create a smaller stadium, which will create a more intimate atmosphere, a better atmosphere for the players and for the fans, and help promote women and girls football in the city. And if we are able to design it in such a way that it's specific for female athletes, then it will probably be the first of its kind in the world, which again would be another huge landmark for the club and for the city and for women's football.
Because the summer of 2022, we had the European Championships here, right? And it was a fantastic event. It was awash with people for the Women's Euros. That made a massive difference as well. Though those sort of events attract a lot of attention too.
I think that's right. I think increasingly women's football is getting traction both nationally and internationally, but you need to show support and investment to be able to build on that. Let's not forget, for so many years, women's football has been underinvested in, it's been underappreciated, and there have been barriers put in the way of women. And I think as a city, given the city we are and the reputation we have, it would be so fitting for us to be the first city that manages to build a purpose-built stadium for women's football. And I think it would send a signal and hopefully, inspire others to do the same.
And you've got the great Vicky Losada who's playing for Brighton at this moment in time. There's some exciting plans for a new fan zone I know that you sort of had a great time when you were at Box Park last year. Tell me what is happening. Can you tell me what's happening? Because
Sure.
it looks great in terms of the plans, doesn't it?
It does. We need some help from the council now to get it approved. So,
There you go, Bella.
no,
It's in your inbox.
we want to try and do two things. First of all, to elongate the match day experience for people. You know, get them here earlier, have them here later, and obviously that creates a better atmosphere, hopefully, in the stadium, gives people a better day out. But it also helps, hopefully, with the transport, because getting to and from the stadium is always a challenge. It is for any football stadium in the country when you're trying to get tens of thousands of people into a small area and out again in a relatively short period of time. But if people come earlier and leave later, then hopefully that will spread the demand for the transport around the stadium to and from, and that will give people a better match day experience, help again with the environment because there'll be less pollution because people won't be stuck in traffic jams for all that time. And more people hopefully will come by train because people will enjoy a drink in the new fan zone as well. So all round, we think it's a great opportunity to further invest in the football club and in the fan experience. And obviously, hopefully, when the planning committee meet and look at the plans, they'll say, what a great idea, off you go.
You mentioned earlier about the relationship with American Express, and you've got a lot of good relationships and brilliant rapport with so many local companies, Snickers UK, Piglet's Pantry, some fantastic success stories, who have been with the club for a long time. Just how important are those? And do you think that the further you go up the food chain in terms of football, we've talked about not having a ceiling, still retaining those relationships sort of gives the club its essence, really?
I think they're vital. I mean, these were the companies, many of them, that were here when we had nothing, when we didn't have this incredible stadium and we weren't in the Premier League. So inevitably, the further you go in football, the bigger the partnerships you need and the more income you need. So there are going to be new brands coming. British Airways has just been announced as a new partner, which is incredible for us. But the local companies are really important because they sustain local jobs. They contribute themselves to the local economy. Wherever we can, we'll continue to support local companies, and wherever we can, we'll continue to find a way for our local businesses that have been with us a long time to be part of what the club is doing.
Yeah, you talked about the sort of that sort of impact on the local community, and I think we've said on a macro level, £327 million of direct income. But explain what that is. Are we talking pints and pizzas and burgers of people coming into the city, hotel rooms, rides on the seafront, tourist attractions, or is it actually more long-standing infrastructural benefits that have happened and that could happen in the future?
I think it's both. It definitely is pints and beers and pies and people coming and staying in the city. The club has really put the city on the map in a way it's never been before. And that has had a huge knock-on impact on our economy as a city. We're very reliant on tourism in Brighton and Hove. But I think there are infrastructure benefits as well, and I think there will increasingly be as we work closely with the club to develop the club's future.
We'll do a Q&A in just a moment, so if you've got any questions for Paul or Bella, then get ready to raise your hands. We've got a couple of superstar former Brighton players in the building. Glenn Murray is here. Hello. Good, thank you. Give him a round of applause. And Bobby Zamora is here as well. Hello. We just asked Bobby a quick question. Bobby, you played at the club at the Whitdean Stadium. I know you scored a lot of goals there, so don't tell me you preferred it there. But what was that like coming from there to here? What's the difference? What's it feel like?
Yeah, I'm in a huge difference. But to be honest, I loved the journey. That was my beginning, my opportunity to play professional football at the Whitdean. So some amazing memories, and to be at the club at the start, I suppose, of this massive journey, this amazing journey. For me, it's great to come back and see. I mean, it was a dream when I signed at the beginning, and it was, listen, we are going to have our own stadium. And it was sort of pitched to me, I suppose, that it's going to be a couple of years away. But yeah, you heard it as well a couple of years later. But listen, it does take time, and the likes of Tony and Ray and everybody that's been involved in the club from a very, very long time. It has been a gradual process, and do you know what? It's been great to see that it isn't just an overnight success. It has been a gradual process, and I think that's why the success of the club has been as it is. It's step by step, ticking off boxes. setting targets, as Paul said, and achieving those targets. And yeah, the next one is Champions League football and a bit of silverware. And we're all looking forward to that. So, don't take too long, please. I'm getting old now as well.
Glenn, you've been around for a long time. In fact, you won't ever leave Brighton now, will you? You just won't go anywhere else. I think you get transferred to Bournemouth and spend 3 hours a day in a car.
Yeah, there was somewhere else in between as well, but we won't mention that.
Yeah, we did. That we're skating over that bit.
No, I love the city. Obviously, moving down here from the north, I never thought I would last down here, but it's a city that I fell in love with, and I've just thoroughly enjoyed both my stints at the club and listening in between that, sort of signing the first time and signing the second time. It was literally like signing for a different football club with the same badge, the training ground, the facilities, the stadium. It's just incredible what these guys have achieved. I mean, we were sharing changing rooms, sort of three different changing rooms at the training ground originally. There'd be students regularly walking through, shouting things in. Now we've got a state-of-the-art place with its own spa. I mean, just how far the football club's come. And I think if someone had sat me down in my first spell and said, this is what it's going to look like in 7-8 years, I would have called them clinically insane, to be honest. But what's been achieved is it's amazing, and it's really nice to be part of it.
You were the Premier League record goal scorer for the club, weren't you, until Pascal Gross scored recently? Were you pleased for him, or were you secretly annoyed?
No, do you know, I really...
Tell the truth. Go on, tell the truth.
It wasn't a great record, I'm not going to lie. So I'm actually happy I'm happy that it was Pascal that took it, because Pascal was... he was at service for a lot of my goals, so he was the right man to take the helm.
Thank you very much. Glenn Murray and Bobby Zamora will be around this morning as well. Thanks for joining us. One of the things that often is talked about with Brighton is that it doesn't matter if they go off somewhere else, you'll find somebody else. How do you do it? What do you guys do? I spoke to Tony at the end of, I think it was the Manchester United game, in the tunnel afterwards, and it's everyone's so cool about everything. How do you manage it? Because most other clubs, if you ask them a question about what's going to happen if someone comes for your manager, they go into absolute meltdown. That's just not the case here, is it?
I've got the chairman. The chairman's got a lot of insights through various data banks that we have, and we spend a lot of time working on succession planning, the what ifs, not just on the field but off the field. Managers and coaches in football do come and go, players do come and go, and you can't get emotional when that happens. You might be disappointed if it comes at the wrong time or happens at the wrong time, but at the same time you've got usually another game fairly soon after that, and you've got to prepare and plan for that. So we always try and stay calm in those situations, have a plan, try and execute that plan as quickly and as efficiently as we can, and then off the field to make sure that we've got the best possible people in the jobs that we need them in. And again, if people progress in their careers and get opportunities to do better, then we wish them well. Most of the time, we hope that they'll stay. But if they don't, then we have a plan to make sure that we can replace them with someone as good, if not better. And that's the way organisations grow. If you hire people better than you, you've got a chance to grow the organisation. If you keep hiring people that are smaller than you, the organisation will shrink. And that philosophy stands us in good stead.
We're going to get to the questions in just a second. One final one to you. How easier is it to sort of support and buy into a football club like Brighton when the captain was born in the city, when you've got players that are associated to the local area like Solly March? Does it give you a better and stronger connection?
I think what's brilliant about our club is we've got our homegrown talent, we've got Solly March, we've got Lewis Dunk, and I think that shows kids in this city that you can go on and be absolute champions. And that's great, but what's also brilliant is that we bring in such diverse international talent as well, and we nurture that talent. And that's really what this city is all about generally, and I think the club really typifies that. We've always been a welcoming place, we've always been a place that leads with our values, and I think everything about the ethos of this club really puts that into action.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Right, let's open the floor up for questions to Paul and to Bella. Stick your hand in the air. I think the boys have got you got the mics over there? You've got Mike here and one over there. Who wants to go first? Come on, there's enough of you that are eager. Go on. Gentleman over here who's got a question. We'll get a mic over to you. Bruce is bringing it over. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a question for Paul. Excuse me. As a glutton of the West Stand Upper, I'm just looking at this thing on page 23. These amazing figures, not so much the 612 million, but the 450,000 pints of beer.
How many of those were yours?
All of them. Nearly all of them. I just want to put those figures into context, and I don't know if you're in a position to know. How does that compare pro rata with the rest of the division? Are we a club with a drink problem, or is this about the going rate for the Premier League?
That's a good question. I mean, in terms of spend per head, we're right up there with the best of them. So our fans, when they come here, enjoy eating and drinking, which is great for us, great for our partner Sodexo. And in terms of overall sales for the size of our stadium, we would again be right up there. So, there's always challenges in football grounds of serving people what they want when they want it, because the windows are so narrow in terms of doing that, particularly at half time, which is why, again, the fan zone hopefully will help us enormously, because it will give people that chance to come and drink and eat early, but also take a bit of pressure off the internal concourses. So I think you're right up there, Al. Keep going. You're helping us with these statistics for sure.
Next question. There's one over here. Whilst we're waiting for that to start, can I just ask you, you try to make everybody feel welcome here as well, don't you? The away fans.
Yeah.
So they're looked after in a special way. Yeah.
Off the pitch. Yeah. They are. I mean, we try, and in the early days we were trying to sort of import beers that the fans from whichever part of the country were favourites to drink, and we still try and do a little bit of that. It's a lot harder these days because the industry has sort of homogenised quite a bit, and everyone drinks the same sorts of things in most places. But we still try and sort of put on a local pie that we know that someone from the north might like, and we consult Glenn on that and make sure that tastes for the north are catered for. But I think this over the years in football, so many clubs have alienated 3,000 fans visiting them by treating them badly. Why would you do that? It's revenue. It's an opportunity to create relationships, make people feel safe in the stadium, make our own fans feel safe. Why make it hostile over there? Make it hostile out there, win games out there, and they go home having had a nice pint and a pie, but a defeat. And that's what it's about. It's not about making it hostile to them when they arrive at the stadium.
This gentleman here.
Thank you. My name's Jacob Allen. I'm the Labour councillor for Wooding Dean up the road, where lots of the residents are fans of the club. You should see some of the stickers in the window which refer to our friends in Selhurst. But I was last here in 2009 when this was just a field, because I was about one of 10 children invited to see the breaking of the ground with Norman Cook. I think Bobby was there, actually. Yeah, I mean, it's fantastic to be here again. I mean, that means my last game was at Withdean. I need to come back. But can you expand on how these numbers still impact the local schools? Because you never know, one of them might grow up to be a member of the local planning committee.
Sure. I mean, first of all, we try and get as many kids into the ground as we can, as often as we can. We've got good discounted ticket prices for young people to come in. We try and make sure our pricing for cup games is keen, so that people that can't afford to come to Premier League games can afford to see the team in a different competition. We've got a fantastic community programme through Brighton, Hove, Albion Foundation, who get out to many, many schools across the whole region. And we're also aware that not every kid is in a privileged position where their parents can actually get them to games regardless of the price. So we try and find areas of the community where we can actually impact children through programmes that nobody has to pay for, that we can get in, introduce them to football, hopefully get them to fall in love with football. And at some point in the future, there are many kids I know who work in football now, or young people that work in football, who were never able to come to football because their parents couldn't afford it. But one of those programmes opened their eyes to the game, and they've progressed, and they've actually found jobs in the industry. So there's so many different ways, I think, to interact with this football club, whether it's through the foundation, whether it's through the first team, whether it's coming to watch our women's team play, or whether at some point it's finding a way into the club with a job, which would be fantastic as well. So we always look to the local community to hire first and foremost, and there are certain specialist positions where we might search more widely, but there's always opportunities here.
I've got a question down here. Bella, have you felt like that the impact of the club, the rise of the club has seen like a greater reach into communities, bringing more children to the game?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Paul mentioned the work of the foundation, formerly Albion, in the community, and I think what they've done across the city has been phenomenal. It's really important to us in Brighton and Hove that we are one city and we don't become two cities. There is stark inequality in our city like there is everywhere, and we are committed to trying to close that gap. And I think the club has shown that it also shares that commitment, and I think that's really important.
This lady here, hello.
Yes, the foundation, it was Albion in the community when I was benefiting from it. I'm a cancer survivor, and I went on one of your walking football courses that was organised with Macmillan. My nickname was Striker, so
A couple over there as
I was
well.
telling someone.
Were you faster than Glenn?
No, I was more a sort of Lineker. I used to hang about around the goal mouth.
Okay.
What I wanted to add was something that Bella said, and something that you asked her was the impact. We've got all the figures, and obviously the club has the most wonderful and huge financial impact on the city. When I go to matches, I'm a councillor, but I'm also a season ticket holder. When I go to matches on a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday or in the evening, and I've got my blue and white scarf on, everybody is on my side at the bus stop, on the train, and it's not anything to do with money, it's a feeling that the club, and I've seen it change. I've only lived in Brighton for 15 years, I've been a fan for much, much longer. But it's changed and it has drawn the city together, and it is just a feeling that we are a successful city because of our club. So really I want to say thank you to the foundation because you made me a lot better, but also thank you for the feeling that the club gives everybody in the city.
Thank you.
Is that the kind of thing that makes, I mean, it must make Tony, it must make you most proud, the fact that you can create a feeling like that reverberates around a whole city?
Oh, amazing, isn't it? And walking footballer as well, which is even better. But no, I think that's what football's about. It brings people together. People work hard all week. They look forward to the game at the weekend. It's a release, a bit of escapism, particularly when you win. But even if you don't, there's that sense of community, getting together with family and friends, having a good time. And you know that sort of sentiment is exactly what we do this job for. You know, winning is important, of course it is. It's, you know, we're a professional sport, and that really matters to us. But actually making people happier in their lives is important too.
Okay, any more questions? Yeah, we've got quite a few down here. We'll get through them. It's okay. Nowadays we can add on as much time as we like, apparently.
Thank you. Mohammed Asaduজ্জামান, councillor for Hollingdon 5 West. My involvement in this Brighton and Hove, I run a small organization, community organization, multicultural group. I put a small plan to the council. Will you ever thought about to have Brighton and Hove Youth Commonwealth game in Brighton?
Sorry,
Commonwealth Games in Brighton. Would you ever think about having the Youth Commonwealth Games in Brighton?
That's right.
Yes. We're open to hosting events at the stadium of all kinds. If it fits with our calendar and we can make it work, and the groundsman lets us use the pitch. He doesn't actually let us use the pitch for football often. So anything we can do to bring different events to the city and help the city do that, and the stadium can be part of that. We've had the Rugby World Cup, we've had the Women's Euros, we've staged various other big events in the stadium, concerts for Rod Stewart, concerts for Fatboy Slim. So why not an event of that kind?
Thank you. That is why I'm here, to make sure. We got Alan from Culture and Economy from Brighton and Hove City Council. I've spoken with Bella as well. So if you want to work with us, obviously why not in Brighton Youth Game? And that will be another extraordinary to bring.
We'll certainly look at that for you.
To connection with the whole Greater United Kingdom.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes. So we pass the microphone to this gentleman here who's sitting on this table as well. Got a few more questions to get through.
Hi, thank you very much. I'm Mark. I'm a councillor from Rossingdean and Saltdean. Success breeds success. So I think when the women's team returns to the city, or comes to the city, and I stress when, not if, we can reasonably expect that the vast majority of fans who come here will obviously move across to support the women. Why wouldn't they? We're a liberated city, no differentiation. So is the new stadium going to be big enough to accommodate 25, perhaps 30,000 women supporters? Because if you think about it, you can stick another 5,000 here and you would sell them.
Wow.
So there is a huge latent support for football in the city because of the excellence. and I don't see why the women should be treated in any way, in an inferior way.
Well, it's not just about the capacity, it's about designing a stadium that is fit for female athletes. So if I take you downstairs to the first team dressing room here, I think there's probably 2 toilet cubicles, which is fine for a men's team because there are urinals as well. But for a women's team, where there might be 20, 25 athletes in the room, that's not really fit for purpose. That's not treating female athletes with the respect that they deserve. Similarly, this stadium is built to sell, as Al very eloquently pointed out, thousands and thousands and thousands of pints of beer. It's not easy to get a glass of Prosecco or a glass of wine. Women drink beer as well, but they don't drink it in the same quantities. So the thinking behind designing a stadium for women's football is very different to designing a stadium for men's football. And I think the growth in crowds in women's football won't be quite as great as you think overnight. So we've got to provide a stepping stone between crowds of 3,000 or 4,000 we're getting at the moment and crowds of 32,000 that we get here. And when you talk to players, particularly the female players, they don't want to play in this stadium when it's 3/4 empty because it doesn't look great, doesn't feel great, doesn't make them feel any better about their performance. What they want is an intimate stadium which is packed full of atmosphere. And we want to try and create that bridge between where we are and here. And we think that a smaller, compact stadium designed for the women's team for a period maybe of a decade, potentially less if women's game grows at an even faster rate, then we can move them back into this stadium. By then we'd have created some learning about what works in a stadium designed for women, and maybe we can then adapt and modify this stadium to fit both genders. That's going to take a bit of time, but that's the strategy. And it's really important with every part of every step that you have in building a strategy to build a football club that you think through every single part of it and not rush to the answer, because sometimes the bit in between is the most important bit, which for us in the women's game is building an audience that's sustainable and is prepared to pay to watch the women's team. At the moment, the prices are very, very low, which is fine because it's an accessible sport for a lot of people. But in order to make it sustainable for the future, it also needs to generate an income, and that's the next stage of the plan.
Okay, next question. This gentleman here, hello.
Thank you very much. My name is Barış Ergü and I'm from Sun Harvest. My question is for Paul. When people are asking me, Barış, where is this success coming from in this Brighton or Albion, I always say is the chairman.
So do I.
How much, exactly, how much he is putting for the club. We all know that. But also in the background, we have massive scouting team. So, but these people, at least myself, we don't know much about what's going on there because they are working quite well also. So could you describe us a bit how they work, how many people in the team, are they all based here in the training ground or all around Europe? Yeah, I just want to ask, could you describe the scouting team a bit?
Are you allowed to give any of these secrets away, by the way?
I don't want any secrets. Keep the secrets.
Well, first of all, thanks for the use of your lounge today. It's very nice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With your help. One more thing, as a suggestion, not possibly this year now, but for next season, to invite more women and kids for the stadium to introduce them. Maybe you could do one game just for ladies and kids, closed for men. It could be interesting, and it's going to invite many women and kids. So for the future, some good, more attractive.
Some good
Thank
points
you very much.
there. First of all, if I talk about our recruitment team in any detail, Chelsea will come and take them. So I don't want to do that. But there's a big team of people. You know, we use a lot of data to inform our recruitment. We have people that actually go to watch games, watch players. We compare the data to what we're seeing with our own eyes. We do a lot of profiling on the players, find out what sort of characters we're potentially transferring in. And then we try and put all of that together with valuations, what we can afford, what we can't afford, what the player's salary is going to be, what the agent's fee is going to be. And there's a lot of people that create that particular series of events. And, you know, those people work really hard behind the scenes, very talented people, but they're not necessarily the sort of people that we will profile widely. You know, the technical director, David Weir, will have obviously a high profile. And that is just the way we work. We try and keep those things pretty much under wraps because they're the the pieces of the engine of this football club that deserve a lot of praise but don't get a lot of profile, and that's the way football works in many ways. And I'm half joking when I say that if we make those people too high profile, then and we start talking too much about how we work, then other clubs may well take them. And as I said earlier, we don't mind good people going to good jobs, better jobs, but not too soon, and we don't want to make it too easy. So we try and keep that balance right. In terms of a women's only, child only event here, we have quite a few events where we have open training, which tend to be during the school holidays and tend to attract lots of kids, which is great, and mums and sisters and brothers, and it's really a great way for young people to get exposed to the stadium. We don't charge for those events. Players are really accommodating in terms of autographs and photos, and we give away stuff for the kids. So that's one level. The women's games are really good. We get lots of women and children coming to the women's games, which is also good. And then I mentioned earlier the cup games where the ticket prices are lower. That also tends to attract more families and particularly a lot more kids. So I think I would probably be in trouble with the council or the government if I said no men. I think that would probably cause some issues for different problems than the ones you're talking about. But overall, everyone's welcome here. And, the more women and children come to games, the happier we are. And, we've long said in football that if we can change the profile of a typical crowd, there will be less problems in the stadium. Not many men sort of reach over a woman to have a go at the guy sitting 3 seats away. But if there's a bunch of guys there and they've all had lots of beers, then that can happen. And we don't want that. We want an atmosphere in here that is good and great for the team, but we want it to be a pleasant atmosphere where everyone feels welcome.
A couple more questions. Gentleman at the far side there by the door.
Hello, my name is Lloyd. I'm the Member of Parliament for the area of which the ground is in. And I, of course, remember when this was being built and Lewes District, just next door, spent millions of pounds trying to object to the stadium, said it would be an eyesore and it would be awful for the traffic, none of which has materialised. And I loved it when I was on planning committee only a few years ago, where there was an application, unfortunately didn't go forward, but to build a hotel here. And Lewes District objected, and they objected on the grounds that the hotel would obscure the view of the beautiful building. And I thought how things change and how often the objectors are wrong, and actually building things, and maybe this is a hint to our planning colleagues, building things in this area to build up the capacity of the ground has been a great success, and we need more of it, not less. But my question is, we've got 239 million brand and media value to the city, which is clearly true. I mean, a few months ago, I was in a refugee camp in Bangladesh, the Rohingya refugee camp, and there they had tuned in to watch Brighton, Hove, Albion play Manchester United. And, and they didn't know who I was from Adam, but they knew that I was from Brighton and who I was supporting. And that is a great brand, but how do we monetize that? Because to some extent, what we want to then do is see that in our city. So what more can our city, and potentially the club, but particularly the city, do to bring that money in and to welcome not only away fans, but welcome all people because of that link? So it's not just a theoretical number, but a material number that we all can benefit from the club and from the city.
Great question. Thanks for that, Lloyd. I think as a city, we need to start embracing and developing strategically our offer to fans coming both within the country and outside of the country. We've had a bit of a difficult recent history as a city. We've had 20 years of no overall political control in Brighton and Hove. And in my view, that has meant that the city has somewhat stagnated because you've had policy making being done by the sort of lowest common denominator, what you can get different political parties to agree on. And you've had no party able to come in with a real vision and a strategy for the city. Now, that has changed following the local elections in May. And one of the things that us as a new Labour administration has been trying to signal to the club, to the city, to investors and to supporters around the world is that we are a city that is open for business. We're a city that wants to expand. We're a city that has ambition and vision and drive. And that means catering for people's basic needs, ensuring that our basic services are up to scratch. but also thinking strategically about our offer and about our infrastructure so that we can welcome more people to Brighton and Hove. We can give them a really good experience, and we can ensure that our city lives up to the club's reputation on the global stage.
Okay, I think we've got one more here and one more there. So let's come down here. Oh, go should we go there first? Shorter route, yeah, go there. Okay, go on. You go first. You got the mic. It's working. Go for it.
Hi, thanks. I'm also a councillor for Preston Park Ward. My question is related to the the proposed women's stadium. Do you have a site in mind, and can you give us some sort of time frame on when you think it might be built?
Hopefully quicker than 13 years that it took to build this one. We've got a couple of ideas in mind. We're not quite ready yet to sort of share those publicly, and we've talked a lot with Bella already and one or two other potential partners. So we certainly want to make sure it's in the city of Brighton Hove, that's for sure, because that's really important, I think, not just to our club, but our fans and the players. We also want to make sure it's accessible, because I think, again, that's important. We don't want to create more traffic in the city of Brighton Hove. We understand the sensitivities of that. And we also want to try and make it as efficient as possible for us. So, whilst we're looking to improve the number of jobs and increase the number of jobs, there are services that we have in this stadium that could be shared, and therefore, make it more economic for us to run a separate stadium if we get to that point. So it's a process. And it's one that we're really committed to. Obviously, ultimately, we're going to need Tony's support if we're to move ahead with it, because building a stadium isn't cheap. But at the same time, we genuinely believe in women and girls football, and I passionately believe that there is a gap at the moment, and there's a lot of pressure from the FA to push teams to play in big stadiums like this, women's teams, but that's great if you're Manchester United or Arsenal and you can fill 30, 40, 50,000, but we're not there yet. And we might be in the future. We should be in the future. We hope to be. But we've got to work towards that, and we've got to work towards that sustainably so that we don't end up incurring more losses than we've already incurred in the past. We want to try and make it a viable proposition.
Gentleman here.
Am I?
It's on. You're on.
Is it on?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Oh, yeah, good. Well, I was going to talk about my trial that I had out at the Goldston in 1971, but it's a bit painful, so I'm not going to. But what I will say is that in another life as well, I was a paint salesman for about 40 years, and I sold every can of paint. Now, people who know me know that I hardly ever mention that. But I sold every can of paint that come up here when it was built. And I don't think a lot of people know, but every empty can of paint we collected and took back, and it was recycled. Not one empty can went to landfill. And I think that's something that people should know more about, because it really shows that there was an effort made to be sustainable. As I say, every empty can of paint that was finished was rinsed out, taken back, and the paint companies recycled them. So that's something really that is a special thing, really, I think.
Fantastic, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll do one more before we go. Go on then. Bruce is going to bring it over to this gentleman here, and then we'll leave it there.
Morning. My name's Ivan. I'm one of the councillors in West Dean and Hove Park. In regard to women's football, I'm sure you realise there's a football stadium at With Dean Stadium, so I'll leave that with you, but it could be a good site. But my question actually is in regard to this ground here. I've been a season ticket holder since the ground opened, but can you talk about plans for possible development within the grounds? There's always muted about a second stand for our north stand. Is that possible? Could it happen if you want to get to that sort of next level, 40,000 fans, and if we want to progress as a club, possibly to up the table even further? We're probably going to need to increase the capacity to this ground, but of course, is that possible, other than the odd extra few seats here and an extra few seats there?
The chairman's sinking lower and lower in his seat with every question that comes here, because there's a bit of a cost to all of this. Not really is the answer. I think, you know, we're looking at where we can add hundreds of seats potentially, not thousands. And, you know, we're probably at a very nice capacity at the moment. I mean, there's always the future and what might happen in the future and the growth of the club, as we talked about right at the start. But having a full stadium for every game, making sure that even in the more difficult times, because football isn't always a straight line of progress, there's going to be bumps in the road, we've got to be prepared for those, that we've got a stadium that's still full and still vibrant, and if we do hit a bump and we have a little bit of a dip, then people still want to come, still want to watch us, still want to help us get back to where we are at the moment. So I think it's more likely hundreds, not thousands. We're not talking about, you know, I've seen, in fact, have regularly sent to me plans for another tier here and another tier there. It's not, you know, I'm not an engineer or an architect, but from all of the colleagues that I've spoken to that are, you know, that's not really viable or possible. It's certainly not viable if it is possible. So at the moment, we're pretty happy, 32, 33,000, and as long as we keep filling it, keep prices reasonable so they're accessible to people, then I think we're in a good place.
Thank you very much. Right, I think we'll call it a day there. Thank you very much for spending your morning with us. We do appreciate it. It's been great to have you here. I also want to say thank you to two men who I suppose we wouldn't be in this stadium and having these conversations if they weren't part of the journey. Two heroes of the football club. Bobby Zamora and Glenn Murray are here today. And of course, none of us would be here without the chairman, Tony Bloom, who is in attendance. Thank you very much for coming, Chairman. Thank you for everything you do to the club and for the local community. And to Bella Sankey, the council leader, and to CEO and Deputy Chairman Paul Barber, who've joined us this morning as well. Thank you very much for your questions, really appreciate it. And remember, the next time that you're watching Brighton and Hove Albion on your TV or inside this stadium, remember that you are one of 216 million pairs of eyeballs that are doing so. It's another great reason to be involved in this super football club. Thank you very much for coming, we appreciate it.